fascinating. And this I think is pretty fascinating. It's funny, you know, maybe we don't know directly what Buddha had to say and what he was really doing. Maybe he wasn't doing anything more than what we're doing. But one of the legends, at least passed down, is that he left the religious culture because he wanted to look within and see what he could find about life within versus without. So this sort of relates and is about, it's funny, it's called power, but I think it's more, I would rather use the PC word, empowerment. You know, it's always nice to say, wow, I felt empowered from that group. I came out of that group feeling powerful. You know, there's a marketing difference. So let's see if I can. Okay. So I'm going to start this video, and it features a Harvard professor, and she was one of the people who spoke at TED, you know, those TED videos. This one I chose is not the TED video because it's 4 minutes shorter. So it's the same material. I don't know why it's 4 minutes shorter, but
all the world's waiting for you.
okay. See if I can get that thing.
You can cool it down a little bit too.
Okay. Now, how do I get that thing off? Ah. Okay, it looks like that's the best I'm going to do. Let's see, let's do it this way.
Okay. I have to say, it's mostly the boots, but I'm going to talk to you today about body language. And first, let's just talk a little bit about how body language, our nonverbal behaviors, really influence the inferences that other people make about us. So people mostly, from our nonverbal behaviors, are inferring things like, how strong is this person? How trustworthy is this person? How competent is this person? How much do I like this person? And these inferences are responsible for really important outcomes. And we make them quickly, sometimes in a split second. And inferences from nonverbal behaviors like, how smart do I think this person is? They predict things like election outcomes. They predict who gets hired, who gets promoted, who gets asked out on a date. So all kinds of outcomes are determined by nonverbal behaviors, and that process happens pretty quickly. But I'm going to focus today on specific nonverbal behaviors. And before I do that, I want to ask you right now to think about, what are you doing with your bodies? So how many of you have your arms crossed or your legs crossed or even your ankles crossed? How many of you are making yourselves smaller so that you don't bump into the person next to you? How many people are sprawled out and actually have their arm draped on the chair next to them, or their knees spread? So I want you to pay attention to that. And I hope that in 10 minutes I'm going to convince you that if you tweak your nonverbal behaviors in really pretty easy and simple ways for a short period of time, it's going to make you feel more powerful through physiological changes in your body. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So here are some examples of power poses. So what I want you to note about these is that they are all very open and expansive. So those are the two sort of criteria that determine whether it's a power pose, whether you're open and you're expanding your body. All of these, I think, are examples of power posing reflecting power that you already have or a victory that you feel. So people do this, I mean, this is very common after victories. They put their arms up, you know, or when you're generally feeling powerful, you're more likely to do something like this. You feel open, you feel disinhibited. So it reflects power. It's also used to communicate power. So I'm sure that you have the LBJ treatment up at the top there. So again, it's making yourself bigger, getting in other people's space, reaching out. So it's used to reflect power and to communicate power. And this is true not just for humans, but also for non-human animals. This is just one example, but you have, primates who will bulge their chests to make themselves bigger. The peacock fanning his tail feathers. You have even cats will idle sideways and raise their back to make themselves look bigger. So this is common across both human and non-human animals. Now, on the other hand, powerlessness is reflected and communicated through these contractive closed postures. So this is a very sad, powerless person, but this is an example. And it really is just everyday things that you do, like crossing your arms, also touching your face and touching your neck. This is really, really communicates powerlessness. Anything that you do that makes you smaller and hunching your shoulders. This is about powerlessness. It reflects it and it reinforces it. So we know already that power causes power posing. So when you possess power, whether it's short-term or long-term, or when you're communicating power, you do things like this. You power pose. You do the Wonder Woman pose. But what we wanted to know was whether you could fake it till you make it. So can you do the opposite? And I want to tell you a little bit about how we got to this. So my main collaborator, who I'm so sorry can't be here with me, but Dana Carney, and I both teach in business schools. And you may not know this, but in the MBA classroom, about half of your grade is determined by participation. We both were concerned about the gender grade gap and wondering, what's going on. Are women participating less? And not just women, but really are non-mainstream white men participating less? So people who are not white men coming from finance backgrounds. There seems to be a gap. And we both noticed that these people who are participating less are engaging in more of these contractive, closed postures. Now, let me just say and acknowledge, of course, it's very possible that you're not calling on those people because they're doing that. But we felt like there was actually more to it, that was not the only thing happening. That if we could get them to spread out, we might actually get them to participate more. And so you might wonder why why would we predict something like this? It's a little bit counterintuitive. And I'm going to give you two little pieces of research that led to this prediction. The first is that we know already that feeling happy makes you smile. And this is a natural Duchenne smile where the muscles around the eyes are contracting. But researchers have also shown that making someone smile like this makes them happy. Even when they don't feel happy, asking them to smile like this makes them happy very quickly, and we call that facial feedback. So we know that our nonverbals both reflect and reinforce feelings. The second is a little, it might seem like it's coming out of nowhere, but so when you think about primate hierarchies, the alpha male tends to have high testosterone and low cortisol. And from a Darwinian perspective, the assumption is that is the individual that has the highest innate basal testosterone and the lowest innate basal cortisol. But primatologists have discovered, in the last decade or so, that if an alpha has to be taken over, if an alpha is lost and another individual has to ascend and become the alpha, this is what they find. Over just a few days, that individual's testosterone rises and his cortisol drops. Similarly, if for some reason a primate is pushed to the bottom of the hierarchy, you have the opposite. His testosterone decreases and his cortisol rises. And now, let me say a word about testosterone and cortisol. Testosterone is what we call the dominance hormone. It's related to confidence, dominance, aggressiveness. Cortisol is related to stress. So obviously, lower cortisol means you're less stressed out, both in the moment and over the long term. It really can sort of erode your health over the long term. And low cortisol testosterone is clearly associated with power. We've known that for a while. Cortisol is associated with low status if your cortisol is high. So therefore, it seems to be that this endocrine profile of high testosterone and low cortisol is the best neuroendocrine profile for effective leadership. And indeed, in the last year, researchers have shown that the best leaders have relatively high testosterone and relatively low cortisol. Because what is that? That's a confident person who can go into a stressful situation that's competitive and still feel confident and not react to the stress. So you want a calm, confident leader. So we felt that it's possible that if you can change a role, like taking over the alpha position, or maybe taking the corner office, it's also possible that you could just change people's feelings of power through these minimal changes. So let me tell you what we did in this study. So first, people come into the lab. So let's take this female participant. And we first take a saliva sample, and that's our time 1 hormone sample. It's very easy. They just spit into a little vial. They then, for 2 minutes, take on 2 high power poses. So 1 minute each. They're just asked to sit in these certain positions. They don't look at pictures because we don't want to prime them with a concept of power. We describe to them how to sit. This is just one example of a high power pose. 2 minutes. After that, they fill out some questionnaires, we ask them how powerful they feel, and we also give them an opportunity to gamble. Because when people feel powerful, they're much more risk tolerant. And this is a gamble where they are endowed with $2 and they can roll a die and have a 50-50 chance of increasing that to $4. So that's our risk tolerance measure. And then we take, after about 17 minutes, which is the right amount of time between these time 1 and time 2 samples, we take another hormone sample because we want to know what their baseline levels are. Half of their participants are randomly assigned to that. Half of them are randomly assigned to this condition. And in this condition, they take on 2 low power poses instead. Same thing. This is what we find on risk tolerance. We find that the high power posers are significantly more likely to take the gamble. But what's more interesting to us is this. So this is their change in testosterone and cortisol. 2 minutes in a high power pose makes your testosterone rise significantly and your cortisol drop significantly. 2 minutes in a low power pose does the opposite. 2 minutes. And I just want to say, this is in a room alone. So they're not getting feedback. It's not like they're standing like this and people are like, wow, she's really powerful. That's not what's happening. They're not getting that feedback and going, oh, I must be powerful. Like, this is really reinforcing. They're sitting alone in a room. Okay, so you might ask, all right, okay, so you get these effects. So what does that mean, for sitting in the classroom, going into a job interview, a venture capital pitch, going in to make a pitch to potential funders? What do? Do you go in and do you sit like this? Because, I would say probably not. I also studied gender stereotypes and cultural norms, and I think it would be hazardous for me to advise anyone, especially women, to go in and do this. And you may like it or not, but there are gender stereotypes that do limit what we can do in the interactions and what inferences people draw. So I would say no. So what we wanted to show next was that just doing this before you go into a room does change your performance in a significant way. Not only does it change your hormones, but it actually makes you perform better. So in the second study, we again have the high and low power poses, 2 minutes each, and this is what happens this time. You go in, you do these power poses, and then we subject you to what's called the Trier social stress test. And this is something that's used in the lab to really increase people's cortisol, and I'll tell you what's stressful about it. You are told you have 5 minutes to write a speech. That's stressful. And the speech is about your dream job, and you are supposed to convince 2 evaluators why you are suited for this dream job, but you cannot lie or misrepresent yourself. These 2 evaluators are going to be evaluating you with clipboards in real time as you give this speech, and you're going to be filmed, and then other people will evaluate you later. Okay, so that's stressful, because we know that people are terrified of public speaking. I'm actually terrified right now, but I'm not anymore, but I used to be. But so what happens though, that's not the most stressful thing. What's most stressful about it is that these 2 evaluators are trained to sit here like this. No nonverbal feedback, totally neutral expression, no nodding, no movement, no shows of approval or even disapproval. Only they're locked onto you, they're watching you, they're not spacing out, and they're giving you no nonverbals. This is very stressful. Okay, so we do, again, 2 low power poses or high power poses before this job interview where people are basically saying you stink, you know, with their nonverbals. And again, they're not in these poses while they're in the job interview. They do them before. What we find is this. We then take these videos, have 2 coders who are hypothesis and condition blind, code them on a variety of nonverbals, all kinds of performance measures, and we just find these whopping effects. When you do this 2 minutes before and you go in, these hypothesis blind coders are like, hire her. And when you do this, they say, no way, don't hire this person. And this is driven, by the way, by changes in the extent to which these people are engaging and enthusiastic and charismatic. So that's mediating this relationship. So if you pose like that and then you go in, you're much more excited about what you're doing. And that's what's coming across. The content doesn't matter. What you're saying doesn't matter. And this actually, I'm not saying that it never does, but this lines up, I'm actually saying nothing, right? It's just nonsense. But you're all like laughing, it's amazing. So, but this lines up with some data that's not yet published, a dissertation by a student at Boston College who looked at 180 venture capital pitches. They were 1 or 2 minutes long. She's a nonverbals expert. She coded them on a lot of different variables. And she found that the 2 best predictors, she also looked at content of the pitches, of who got the VC money, and not many people get VC money, were enthusiasm, genuine enthusiasm, and lack of awkwardness. So if you believe in your idea and you can communicate that, that's what matters. And that seems to be what was coming across in this case. So here are the takeaways. First, in practice, prepare in advance only if it's for a few minutes. Okay, so what do people do before they go into a job interview? They're sitting down, I wish I had a chair, like this, and they're looking at their iPhone. They're making themselves as small as possible. It's the last thing you want to do. Instead, go to a bathroom stall and stretch out. Like, just walk around, be moving, have your feet spread, you know, have your arms spread, be reaching out. If you're in your own office, put your feet up on the desk. No one's watching you. Do whatever you want to do. You know, the cultural and gender norms don't matter. If you have some space that's private, do that before you go into the interview, before you give the speech, before you give the pitch. 2 minutes. Second, during the interaction, you want to expand without dominating or without complimenting. So people tend to do one of 2 things. They either go in and they think they've got to own the whole room, but really what they're doing is like stealing the room. And people are like, I don't like this guy, you know? So so you want to go into that situation. If somebody has say you go into a job interview and you already have lower power, you don't want to go in and try to be the most dominant person in the room. But the other thing that people do is they compliment. When they go in to somebody who has higher status, they tend to exaggerate the difference by making themselves even smaller. So I want to say, don't do either of those things. Instead, go in and be as big as you can be comfortably. Square off your shoulders, stand with your feet apart. If you have to sit, try to rest your arms on the arms of the chair. That will prevent you from doing this. If you have a prop, sorry, I keep touching this. If you have a prop like a whiteboard or something, put your hand on it, or the back of a chair, anything that forces you to stretch out. That's what you want to do when you're in the room without really coming across as super dominant. But here, there's a big picture takeaway that I think is particularly relevant, especially to a lot of what the fellows have been talking about in the last couple of days. what other minimal manipulations can empower people? I mean, this is 2 minutes in a pose, and it leads to these outcomes for both. By the way, this is not moderated by gender. This is for women and men, and for people of different races. So what other minimal manipulations can we come up with that are going to lead people to feel more powerful, to feel more confident, to feel more engaging and warm and excited about what they're doing? And I think I'm going to stop there.
So, Wesley, what did she say?
He said that making yourself bigger makes you feel more powerful and makes you come off more powerful.
Yeah. There's Andy. Good job, Andy. See. And that somehow it impacts something inside yourself. So it's interesting. So hogwash. By the way, I don't care what anybody's opinion is because I'm not invested in it. But hogwash, something good. Comments.
I thought the 2 minute time was really interesting. It's so minimal that you can open yourself up. And just because you make yourself big, I think what it does, it jumps your spirit up. And that's what the smiling and everything was. I think I've experienced that before. And I've seen it before with people, either being more closed or shining.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I just think it's interesting how like you can use your mind and you can use your body as tools for opening up something else like within you. Like you can change. Like I think you can change like molecules and chemicals in your body. Like that's what it's all about. Like smiling and like moving differently. Like you're changing chemicals that are being released.
Within that were there all the time.
Yeah.
It's just sort of how do you access them through meditation, through posture.
Well, I teach skiing in the wintertime.
Oh, you do?
And,
Cool.
Yeah, so anyways, we just had our staff meeting this week, our first preseason meeting, so I had that on mind. And I think this is really applicable to skiing, like, and teaching skiing, because when people are real closed and looking down at their skis or down at themselves, and like, they have a really difficult time skiing. And if you can just get them to like open up and like be big and like in a powerful pose and like looking out powerfully, like they'll ski like tons better, like clean up so much of their skiing, like especially for beginners. People that come into skiing without a lot of confidence in their ability to learn how to ski, they're very kind of closed. And it's those postures and you can see it in them. And the first thing you have to do is like break that before you can even like give them any kind of technique. Like,
Interesting.
Let's stand in a powerful pose.
Yeah, isn't it? It's
an athletic, powerful pose.
And in exercising, a lot of the tapes will say, get your chest open. And I don't know if that makes you exercise more vibrantly subconsciously. Andy?
Well, I fell in love with it. And I completely experientially.
Yeah.
But experientially, I'd like to add to what she was saying.
Yeah.
There's maybe a component that was left out on my pivotal ingredient. When I walk and hike, I never put my hands in my pockets. As a musician, my hands would be out playing, and palms would often. And so I always say that this part of my body are antennae. Right? And so I've even found myself really, Christ inference of all. But I've found myself walking, a really fall day up in the mountains on a trail. trail like this.
Yeah, that very open.
Just pulling in the energy, not
Yeah.
real big. I'm
Yeah.
not trying to get big, I'm just trying to get more juice.
Uh-huh.
And I think part of this, at least the way I've interpreted it on first blush, is that you're not only doing this, but you're doing that when you get there. And I know personally, when I'm like doing one of these, I'm not open to the communication.
Interesting.
And all the stuff that I'm unaware of, but, you know, I somehow comply with.
Yes.
So anyway,
That's interesting. I've noticed, because I raise money for, so, and I've thought about this since I Anna mentioned it maybe 6 months ago, and then this came up on one of my apps, is how I came upon it again. And so I spend the day on the phone. And if I sit there talking like this, then my voice sounds crimped. A lot of times it sounds froggy, foggy type thing. But if I walk around and talk to someone, then I say, no, I don't think that works. I think this works. But a lot of it's not, I don't think of it as power. I think of it as maybe more confident, more convincing, being able to express something better.
we briefly just talked about this, and, you know, were you struggling to find that word? And I said, I presence, and not in a temporal time.
Yeah.
But in just who this person is at this moment. And then you can eliminate the competition, you can eliminate the misconstruction of
Yes.
who you are. If you're just like there and big and quiet about it, then you can afford to do this because you've already established
Yeah.
presence. And it's really, I mean, you know, I'm still, you know, you talk about meditation practice. I'm still practicing being human.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work.
And who?
Speaking of the phone, I actually have a friend who's a disc jockey. I was listening to him once a few years ago. I said, smile. It really made a big difference, you know, even though he's, blind. And so, he remembered that, and I remembered that from some workshops. So, how about you just smile
And think
talk
about
on the
picture
phone
taking.
or whatever. It radiates a different. Also, I remember there's a concept when you're with people, whether it's business or just talking, but if you mirror the body language, then you communicate better. If someone's sitting back like this, obviously it's a power position, so you want to sit maybe not exactly like that, but you want to shift subtly to their position. And if they're maybe like this, you may want to shift subtly forward or something.
Huh. Interesting.
They just say you have better communication. The other person's receptive.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in groups of men where I'm saying something and I'm doing these, and I'll look around, and all 6 guys are all doing this too, And it's not a question of comfort, it's like, I'm the boss.
Interesting.
I just want to say I love this. I just thought it was very, very interesting and fascinating.
Thank you for that. And before it gets unsaid, thank you for all the technical. I understand what's required to put to schlep this stuff around, so thank you for that part.
I could get a great picture, but I couldn't get any sound. I could get a 50-inch picture of her, and I can understand. It's funny, but she seems attractive, and I think part of that is how she holds herself too. It's funny how she seems attractive.
Yeah, no, what was her name?
Amy Cubby.
Cubby?
Amy Cubby. You can also, if you Google power posture and TED, she'll come up with power posture and TED. So I want to close with 2 things. One, Wesley, so you walk out on a basketball court at the first of the game. What's your posture? Stand up and show me. Yeah, it could literally, it could be like this. Yeah, something that says to yourself, oh, I'm gonna go get it, and it says something to the team that, wow, these guys are good. So here's my close. I want to tell you about, Anna and I had this great date at, yes. Oh, sorry, Barney. No. Please.
As I was sitting there listening, I was very literally but occurred to me the arbitrary religious time frame and the word pray. What would that mean? The next step at the 4-minute mark or at the 6 minute mark.
I can tell you firsthand, you fizz out.
I mean, you can't depend on all this. Everything's reaction.
Yeah.
Especially the 2-minute mark and the 6-minute mark.
Yeah.
So
Maybe something you have to play with.
you probably have to write some disclaimer. Anybody that picks this up. 2 minutes, but you can't be responsible.
Yeah, can't be responsive after 2 minutes.
But maybe they did do some research with longer, they just found that 2 minutes was the real secret.
Enough, yeah.
Was enough, minimal enough. I don't
No,
know.
I'm 1 minute at a time, that's what she would say.
Oh, she did?
So Ann and I were having one of our first date at Takashi. I walked in and I saw a fellow, and here's all the restaurant, and this fellow was on, here's the bar, and here's his drink. Instead of being here, he was like this, here. And he was just looking around, and I saw this guy and I said, that guy is interesting. Of all the people in here, and that this is literally what I thought, he would be the one I'd want to talk to. I bet that guy is really interesting. So I sat down, talked to Anna, I went to the bathroom, I spoke to him as I went by, and then Anna came back, and Anna and I are leaving, and Anna goes, Andy! And that's how I met Andy Monaco the first time. Andy was the guy on that bench. And then I went over and talked to him. So it's just so demonstrative of what this is talking about. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think the fact that it lowers cortisol and that it's good for your health, and plus, it's probably better for your posture too, to practice. Anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed it. That's one of my favorite presentations. So do we have any announcements today? We have Cassidy.
Okay.
Cassidy?
Alright, so I just wanted, sorry, I'm a soft talker and I'll try to speak loudly, but I met this guy named David it was in May. I was working at a coffee shop and I was serving him coffee, and then we started talking about like the universe and just all these cool things, and I was like, this is a really cool guy. And he brought up the fact that he's the founder of an organization called Revolution United. And what they basically do is they bring locals together, like they do a bunch of different projects. Like we're in the process of doing a project that's going to start in May, or it's going to be in May, where we get together kids from ages 12 to 18. And we are doing like a festival, like an arts festival for those kids. So we're trying to get all Salt Lake schools involved, like any school that we can get. I grew up in Bountiful, so I'm trying to get Bountiful High. Basically just to help kids realize their potential. We're trying to get troubled kids. I'm trying to get troubled kids primarily. Sorry. And that's basically what the organization is. We go to locals, we say, hey, is there anything you want to change in the community of Salt Lake? And then we try to organize something that would go along the lines of that change, or try to bring about that change. Like there was another
do something about it.
Yeah, there was another event that was for animals. It was called Off the Chain Fest, and they just brought like their pets or like animals that they had, and they walked it like along the streets of Salt Lake, and they raised money for other events. And actually, they raised money for this farm. I don't know if it's a farm. I wasn't involved in that project, but they raised money to like help feed animals that don't really have support. Like, it's surprising how much hay costs. It's like $1,000 for like 3 weeks or something. So they raise money for that, and we just do a bunch of different things in the community. And that's what I love about Salt Lake is like it's really locals first, like community-based, locals first, and that's why it's such a great thing. And I'm really excited about it.
We know a principal, and Anna does meditation in McGillis, where our kids go.
What's the name of the organization again?
Revolution United.
RevolutionUnited.org.
We don't have a website, it's on Facebook. And I only have like 2 business cards because that's all we had on them the last time. But it's really cool, like if you're interested, they have idea silos, which is where we get together. The last one they had, we had just like pieces of paper up on the wall. And he'll usually have just different questions like, what do you think is love? Like, how do you think we can help the youth in Salt Lake? And like different, like all different kinds of things. Like, you know, what would be a good education project? And then you just like write your answer on a sticky note and then you put it up and then you discuss. And that's how the arts festival came up, like how we collaborated and decided on that was by doing the idea silo.
Cool. And do you guys have,
We're not sure yet. We're still working on all the details. But we're thinking the library. That would be really cool.
do you have Anna's contact, or does she have yours?
No, but I can grab it. And
Yeah.
if anyone's interested, just like ask me. I'll give you David's number.
Thanks, Cassidy.
Cool.
That sounds
Very cool.
Any other announcements?
Yes. There's CDs for sale. I think that's it, isn't it?
What are you playing next, Steve?
My CD release party is November 11th, that's a Sunday, at
11/11.
11/11 at 5 o'clock at the Music Garage, which is 1700 South and about 300 West.
That's
Right by Cal.
that's Steve
Albach, yeah.
Albach's
Just north of
place.
Costco,
Right, yeah.
back at Cali.
Yeah, so that's 5 to 7 on the 11th.
5 to 7.
How many would you like, Michael?
Gosh, I was going to get all of them, but I didn't want to deny anybody the opportunity.
Just buy one and rip it, you know.
You're allowed to help.
And sell them. And sell them, right?
Andy, what are you playing next?
We're talking about switching days. I'm on schedule here for the 18th or 16th, whatever that is, but I have a conflict. And so we're talking about next weekend here.
So Andy will speak next week here.
Well, who's, what?
You're gonna be gone.
Well, that might be advantageous.
What do you say?
Advantageous, but I'm gonna be gone.
Okay,
To
so
whom?
Andy's speaking next week, but
I don't know.
did he-
I don't know.
Next week is-
Yeah, next week's also, I think so. I
So,
don't think anybody else is speaking. Okay, yeah.
And then,
So you're gonna get your fill of me because I'm gonna be the musical act
Awesome.
and the presenter.
And the
wow,
meditator.
get the word out, guys.
That's it. Bring them on.
Great.
And I think the next week we have the originator of Nitro Circus that has a hit MTV show and do live circuses across Australia and doing one in Europe. Motorcycles flipping and all that sort
He's
of thing.
next week also.
No, the week after. And
Well, I'm
it's
gonna do that too, so.
I've actually never gone.
Looks like a couple backflips with the car, huh?
I don't like the concept of my feet being above my head.
Use your finger inside.
My cortisol's going up.
It is not.